The New York Jets fire or parted ways with their offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, as more dysfunction hits this franchise. This is the Gangs All Here live show. I'm Ryan Sampson. That's our Jets beat writer, Brian Costello. We're here to react to the New York Jets letting go of another coach on their staff after this staff goes under massive change under Aaron Glenn after one season at 3-14. Kaz, thank you for hopping on here for the live stream, getting your reaction here. What are your thoughts right now? The fact that Aaron Glenn and Tanner Engstrand have agreed to part ways after one season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise now after kind of what we've been hearing for the last week or whatever. It's been rumblings that they were going to change his role. Aaron Glenn was talking to people. I thought Tanner would survive and they would bring in a senior offensive assistant kind of over him with him. Because if you're going to hire a new play caller, you have to do the full search, which means interviewing Rooney Rule candidates, and that's going to take a while. This is today, January 27th. So this is going to take a while now to do this search for the offensive coordinator. And I realize they're down the road with some of these veteran coaches, but they haven't really been doing offensive coordinator interviews yet. So so that I thought Tanner might survive for that. So I'm not totally shocked, Ryan, but I'm surprised. And if you had talked to me a month ago, I would have been shocked because I really thought with what he was given to work with this season, Tanner did a good enough job that he deserved a second look. I'd put it that way. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he was Bill Walsh, but I also saw enough signs that I would have given him a second year and another chance. I didn't think the offensive struggles were all on him.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Look, you're talking about the worst rated quarterback play in the NFL between Justin Fields reclamation project they were trying, Tyrod Taylor as the backup who was often injured, and then an undrafted rookie in Brady Cook. Ultimately, the Jets didn't get good quarterback play, and that put Tanner Engstrand, I feel like, in a bad spot, and you lost your number one wide receiver for most of the season. It's curious, like you said, the timing on this all, though, Kaz, right? You heard the rumblings last week, and you just pointed out, like, it's surprising to do it now in end of January. We're a week and a half away from the Super Bowl. Candidate spots have already been filling up. Jim Leonard, another defensive coordinator candidate, just took the Buffalo Bills job. Yeah. So this is a massive overhaul for Aaron Glenn. It kind of makes you question what exactly this is how I'm thinking for Aaron Glenn after this first year. You know, there was a lot of heat about should he be one and done? This is one of the worst seasons we've seen in a long time. His whole entire staff's getting changed. What does that say about him?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, Ryan, he blew the three biggest decisions a new coach has to make, right? Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and quarterback. He got Chris Banjo right, so give him credit for that, like we always do. But yeah, he really did not get the big ones right here, and so yeah, it's not a good look for him. That's the one side of it. If you're going the pro Glenn side, you say, well, at least he's recognizing his mistakes. He's trying to fix it for year two. But man, it's just tough because these jobs aren't attractive, Ryan. Like the Jets, they don't have a quarterback right now. Their coach is seemingly on the hot seat going into year two. But that being said, people will be interested. I already got a call from somebody right after the news broke, of a coach who was asking me about the job and, wanted my input on the Jets and things like that. And so there are people that are interested, but it's not going to be the guys that you see are interviewing for 4 different jobs and head coaching jobs, the Mike McDaniels and Brian Dabols of the world, right? It's not going to be those guys. It's going to be people that don't have options.
Cause this is a long line of the Jets running through offensive coordinators. They have not had an offensive coordinator last more than 2 seasons since Brian Schottenheimer in 2007 to the 2011 season. Think about that.
2006 to 11, yeah.
2006 to 11. Think about that. Yeah. Since 2011, the Jets haven't had the same offensive coordinator for 2 straight seasons. This is a franchise malpractice, how they are just running through OC after OC, Kaz.
Yeah, I think I've told this story before, Ryan. I was pretty hard on Shotty that last year, 2011, and Rhodey should be fired, and I was pretty tough on him. And I saw Shotty at the owners' meetings this year. He's now the Cowboys coach, and I said to him, I go, man, I'm so sorry. I was like, I was so wrong. I'm like, they've been through 12 different guys since he left, and feels like they've all been worse than the last one. And they just haven't found anything. So I was wrong about Shoddy, and I think a lot of Jets fans were wrong about Schottenheimer back in the day. But yeah, it's been various things. I think some of them showed promise. This kind of reminds me of Johnny Morton, Ryan, right? I thought Johnny Morton did a pretty good job in 2017 with limited skill on the team. And he
Yeah.
had Josh McCown as a quarterback. Then Josh went down. He had to deal with Bryce Petty, and he got fired after 1 year because they wanted to promote Jeremy Bates. And that was some internal politics within the Jets at that point. So this sort of reminds me of that. It is a guy who had 1 year on the job, wasn't so bad that you're like, you have to get rid of him. But for whatever reason, they got rid of him.
Well, look, he joins that list now of the guys you mentioned. Tony Sparano, since Brian Schottenheimer was last the Jets offensive coordinator. They've had Tony Sparano, Marty Mortenwig, Chan Gailey, John Morton, Jeremy Bates, Dowell Loggins, Mike LaFleur, Nathaniel Hackett, and Todd Downing. Finally, Nathaniel Hackett joins that list of all former offensive coordinators for this Jets since 2011. That is insane, the run that they have gone on in terms of how many OCs they've churned through.
Yeah.
The one thing I do want to ask you, Kaz, is, it's funny you bring up Johnny Morton, how it reminds you of that situation. I am wondering, as a Jets fan, because we've seen the history of Woody Johnson's influence on the roster and also with the coaching staff. I remember the Mike LaFleur stuff, how he wanted him off the team after the first year with Robert Saleh's coaching staff. Is there any sense that Woody could have had second year? Sorry. Is there any sense that Woody had some kind of
No, he had nothing to do with this. No, this is all Aaron Glenn. Yeah. No, Woody stayed pretty hands off and let Aaron Glenn do his thing. So he had nothing to do with this one.
So what I'm understanding now, if this is all Aaron Glenn's choice here, he wanted to take away play calling responsibilities from Tanner Engstrand. That's correct for this upcoming season, right?
They were debating. So what I was told was they were debating like what to do. And and that was definitely on the table, was taking away play calling. And I think that's probably where he landed. And that's why we're here today, but it wasn't decisive early on. And so they were kind of talking about roles. And like I said, like with Frank Reich, they've talked to some other senior offensive guys that have been veteran guys that have been around. And the role wasn't clear, but it was clear they were heading towards stripping play calling from him, and I think they got there today. And from what I understand is it was just a conversation of, was there a role for him, and they both kind of decided that this wasn't going to work.
Yeah, look, for Engstrand too. We said this before. He wasn't dealt a great hand, and you would have loved to have seen him get another chance with maybe an actual first round or second round quarterback, someone who had a little bit more skill and skill set as a passer than Justin Fields and an old banged up Tyrod Taylor and an undrafted Brady Cook. It just feels like he was dealt an unfair hand here, Kyle.
And they basically changed the offense halfway through the season too, right? Think about it, when they made the trade, and all of a sudden AD Mitchell and John Mechie were your featured receivers. So he's getting guys on the fly, playing, and this was not an ideal situation for any offensive coach. So I don't get it from that regard. And like I said, I'm not making him out to be Bill Walsh. I understand that the numbers were what the numbers were. But anyone who watched week to week, I don't think you came away going, "Oh my gosh, Engstrand's terrible." There wasn't much talent there. So I don't know. I saw Diana Rossini tweet before, the Jets have a plan. Maybe they do. But right now it's very hard to see what that plan is, and I don't think that plan will be. I'm not seeing any way the plan's going to be popular. I feel like, from what I've heard from fans through the DC search and everything else, it feels like Jim Leonard was the one popular choice that I've heard in this whole thing of the coaching carousel. And now he's off the table, seemingly. I think, was it Schefter reported he's the leading candidate in Buffalo. So yeah, I don't think you guys are going to be happy with whatever the resolution is going to be here. Is there anything that would make you excited?
I mean, I wasn't excited when Frank Reich names were being met. Yeah. Frank Reich hasn't been positively associated with an NFL team in years, since the Super Bowl with the Eagles, where he wasn't even calling the offensive plays. But I agreed with you, because this is something you had brought up when Glenn first put his staff together about how there was a lot of inexperience on the offensive side of the ball again,
Yeah.
where you didn't have that experienced offensive coordinator / play caller, and it was a rookie in Tanner Engstrand. We didn't have that Greg Knapp type
Yes.
on the
Yep.
staff. And Frank Reich, I guess, would have made sense if it started last year. And then you're like, hey, Tanner, we're going to take the play calling duties from you. It was a rough first year.
Yeah.
We're going to go with Frank. But now that you're talking to Frank, I can understand why Tanner's like, so you're taking play calling responsibilities away from me after you put me in probably the worst quarterback room in the entire NFL. You changed the offense halfway through the season. I lost my number one wide receiver in October. And now you're telling me I don't have another chance at this? It feels wrong from Aaron Glenn's giving that side to Tanner Engstrand.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. And yeah, one thing I did hear is like the Jets feel like they're going to draft a quarterback at some point, whether it's this year or next year, right? They're going to have a young quarterback. They want to make sure they have the right structure in place. And maybe they didn't feel that Engstrand was the guy there, or, I took that. Greg Knapp is always the example. That was the plan, right? Was solid. Was the plan was to have Greg Knapp kind of be the mentor for Zach Wilson, to help out with Mike LaFleur as the offensive coordinator, Rob Calabrese as a young quarterbacks coach. And then he tragically died. And that plan, when you talk to people about what went wrong with Zach Wilson, a lot of people inside the Jets wonder what would have happened had Greg Knapp survived. And so I think that plan made sense. So going down that road, I would get it. I just didn't think you needed to fire Tanner Engstrand. I didn't think the play calling was the issue this year with it. I understand if you wanted to bring in a little more structure on the offensive side of the coaching staff with an eye towards a quarterback coming in here in the next 2 years. I get that part of it, but the play calling thing is strange to me.
Very strange. And it's reminiscent also like the situation you highlight with Greg Knapp. I always think about to Tom Moore as well when he was here with the Jets, and he's had a legendary career, and he just actually stepped away from his role from Tampa Bay, but he has that influence of in the quarterback room, how they want their offense to play and play style. So yeah, I completely agree with you guys. And it's funny we mentioned Aaron Glenn's, staff and the overhaul he's going through here. So Tanner Engstrand now joins a long list of coaches that have been let go. Steve Wilkes was expected to be let go just because of how historically bad that defense was last year. But now he joins the likes of the news we got over the weekend, Kaz, was Scott Turner, the pass game coordinator, quarterbacks coach Charles London, defensive line coach Eric Washington, linebackers coach Aaron Curry, Nichols coach Alonzo Escalante, and assistant defensive backs coach Dre Bly, amongst all the other coaches that have been let go. This is crazy an amount of turnover in 1 year. And I want to play this sound from Aaron Glenn at the combine a year ago, Kaz, and get your reaction. Here's Aaron Glenn talking about the process of hiring his staff.
Listen, I think the most enjoyable thing was getting the coaching staff, because there's so many coaches out there that everybody wants you to get, and there are all these names. But I'm a huge believer in getting the guys that's right for the job and right for the job for us. So listen, if the guys don't have all the big names that everybody wants, they are a hell of a coach. You can find them anywhere. Division II, guys high school, other coaches that are assistants of other teams. And that's what I did. And it took a while to do that. And I want to take a while because I want to make sure I get the right guys. And I said this before, compatibility is just as important as coachability, because you want guys that can actually coach together. Whatever my weak spots are, man, somebody can help me with those weak spots. And that's vice versa along the coaching staff. And I did everything I can to try to make sure I do that. And I think we have an outstanding coaching staff. They're going to do a hell of a job for us. It's just like going to get players. I want guys going to help us be able to win, right? And that's what this coaching staff is going to do for us.
Hell of a soundbite there from Aaron Glenn talking about assembling his staff, Kaz. And I just want to get your thoughts on 1 year later, how he says he built his staff to win, and the guys that he wanted may not be the names we know, but apparently after a year, he realizes he didn't have the right coaches.
Whoops. Yeah, that's a great soundbite. Yeah, I mean, he screwed it up, Ryan. He screwed it up. And this is part of, I think the swagger of AG people liked, right, when he came in, and it was like, okay. But it's dangerous on the other end, is when you're kind of that swagger, that confidence, that arrogance, it can bite you when it doesn't work. And so we see that now, because clearly he did not get it right like he thought he did there with all these hires.
No, he clearly didn't. Whew, it's such an indictment, it feels like, on Aaron Glenn, considering this entire staff's being overhauled after 1 year. And look, part of me in my mind, Kaz, and I want to get your thoughts. Part of me in my mind is thinking, you know what? This team was so bad and it didn't look good on the field as a product. Yeah, it makes sense to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and start fresh for another year here. But the other part of me is like, are we just delaying the inevitable here with Aaron Glenn? And he's going into year 2, really, it seems like, as a lame duck with a bunch of question marks at offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. We don't even know who they're going to be. We don't know what kind of style and system they're going to bring in. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I don't know. Am I reading too much into that?
No, it's looks like a mess right now, Ryan. Like I said, if there's a plan, it's hard to see it right now. And why did it take this long? If you weren't happy with Engstrand, I think we all applauded him for moving on to Wilkes quickly and doing that in the season and recognizing it had to be done and doing it. But why? What are we, 3 weeks removed from the season at this point, right? After the championship games, like if you had a problem with Tanner Engstrand, why didn't you fire him that first week after the season ended? It makes no sense why it took this long to reach this decision. And now you're in a spot where the hiring cycle is so far down the line with all these new head coaches getting hired already and other coordinator openings. So it's a really bad look for Aaron Glenn right now.
Certainly is. And look, hey, he says he could find anyone from those coaches from Division II or high school coaches.
Division II. Yeah.
I don't know. Get your resumes ready. I mean, look, it's also not a great look when your former assistant is tweeting, "Yeah, I hate the Jets too," after he got let go. It's just it's wild times. I have never in my life as a Jets fan gone through something like this where it feels so dark right now, and I don't know where this team is going, to be all honest.
Yeah, it's funny. I did something on Sam yesterday on Sam Darnold, and I talked to some people who used to be with the Jets, who are no longer with the Jets, who were with the Jets back during Darnold's time here, and I told one of them, I'm like, this is right now is so much worse than even 2020. Like it's dark. It is, and I'm with you. It's dark times. And this just adds to it.
It just adds to it. So I guess, look, Frank Reich's name's there, but now they, like you said, they had to go through. They have to go through the Rooney Rule. Do you have any sense of names that could potentially pop up here that they could start banging some interviews out for?
Yeah, I would keep an eye. Matt Nagy jumps out to me.
Okay,
right? He left. He's just moved on from Kansas City. I think he interviewed in Philadelphia for their OC opening, although seemingly half the league is interviewed in Philadelphia.
They're all turning it down.
Yeah, but I think he kind of fits the profile, right? Veteran coach. So he jumps out in my mind. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury is out there. Does he have better options? I'm not sure, right? Like I've heard he was mentioned. He was up for the Tennessee job with Saleh, but it looks like that's going to. Does he end up somewhere else? I'm not sure. But that's Nagy came to mind right away, Ryan, for me, just because I know he's looking out there.
Yeah, and look, the Jets put themselves in this situation. Aaron Glenn puts them in this situation because of how late they decided to make this decision into the process. So now you do have a limited view on the types of offensive coordinator candidates you can bring in here. But how important for this job, Kaz, it has to be a previous offensive coordinator in the NFL, right? Like you need to find someone that's going to have had history of calling plays, right? Like that has to be an emphasis from Aaron Glenn's
You'd think so.
Right?
You'd think so, right? I mean, why would you move on from Tanner if you're going to hire another first timer? But I don't know. Is there someone else that Aaron Glenn has worked with during his time in Detroit or New Orleans that he really liked? That was sort of the formula with Tanner. I'm not sure. So, but yeah, obviously, if Frank Reich is the one we know for sure that they've talked to, that's an experienced guy. That's a guy who's been around, has been a head coach, called plays for a long time. So I think that's sort of the model you look at.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, and you talked about this before the beginning of this live stream, when you said, look, there's still people who are interested in this job. Kaz, who's going to want to take this job, to be honest with you. I know that's the 32 job rule thing, but
There is, yeah.
this is a job you'd be taking where there's a very good chance the head coach could be let go in this next year.
Yeah. You'd probably get a 2-year contract, Ryan, right?
Mm.
So you're gonna get a 2-year contract, a few $1 million probably, even if you're not that big of a candidate. So I'd sign up for that. Right? I mean, like if you're not in the NFL right now, right, or if you're low level in the NFL, that's what you're trying to do. I mean, it's not ideal for the Jets that describing the candidate like that, but that's the reality that there are going to be people who want this job. That's for sure.
And it's so it's funny you say that, like, oh, it's going to be a 2-year contract for the guy. Is there any like chance that maybe one of these OC candidates is looking at this and saying, you know what, maybe I can also be, I'm going way hypothetical here. If Aaron Glenn gets fired week 8, 9 of the season, that all OC can be hot, promoted to interim head coach, and you get the opportunity to prove yourself again as a head coach.
Maybe. I don't think people think like that, Ryan, to be honest with you, because most of those situations are disasters where you're an interim coach. Like we've seen it. It's very, very few that you could ever find that worked out with the interim coach thing. So I don't think people go into a year aspiring to be an interim head coach. So, maybe someone's thinking, oh, if Glenn gets fired, I could replace him, next year. But I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to go in thinking like that.
The last thing I want to ask you is, you just talked about also, and you mentioned the drafting of a quarterback. How much of an impact is that decision going to be made here with this new OC that they hire, considering they're going to have some kind of input on the decision whether or not they want to draft a quarterback somewhere in this draft?
Yeah, they'll have input. I mean, I ultimately think, that's Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn making that decision. But clearly, the offensive coordinator is going to have input in how much they like the quarterbacks and which quarterback they like. It's just a question of, how much say they have. And I don't know Muji and Glenn well enough to tell you, like, they'd back. I think, they're banking their jobs on whatever the quarterback is that they take, whether that's this year or next year. So I would think they'd be the ones most heavily involved. But if Aaron Glenn is like a guy, I'll defer to the offensive guys on quarterbacks, then they'll have a lot to say. But it's definitely a role. I don't know how big a role right now, but they're going to play a role in this decision.
Defensive coordinator wise, we heard Wink Martindale came in for an interview over the weekend. He has not locked in a contract here. Is that still up in the air in terms of, is Wink still the favorite? Or I saw the Jets also interviewed another candidate today.
Yeah.
Is that still being processed by Aaron Glenn and who he wants to hire?
Yeah. Look, I don't want to, people have done some really good reporting on all of this, but I don't think Aaron Glenn's telling anyone who the favorite is. Like, I think Aaron Glenn knows, maybe Muji knows, maybe Woody knows. And that's probably about it. Like, from what I understand, is like even people in the building don't really know what's going on with the search. So, the perception of him as the favorite may have been an outside thing. That may have been a thing amongst other coaches in the league, amongst coaching agents. And sometimes those guys have a great read on things and sometimes they don't. I was told to kind of hold off on the idea that Wink was a favorite. He was the first one in, so that's always a sign, but I don't think anyone really knows what Aaron Glenn is thinking. So, I'm remiss to go, this guy's a favorite, this guy's not. That scares me a little bit just from my experience. So, and since we're sitting here, it's Tuesday afternoon, and Wink was here on Saturday. It seems to me if Wink was the favorite, you wanted him, and you had already done all the initial interviews, so you're Rooney Rule compliant, you could have hired him, and they didn't. So that tells me maybe they're still considering all their options. And I think Glenn, like we talked about this a month ago, I think Glenn calling the plays is definitely on the table, and maybe having a first-time defensive coordinator, but that he's not a play caller and just kind of can work with Glenn, but Glenn is the play caller. I could see him wanting to do that and getting more involved. I just think if you're Aaron Glenn and you feel like your job's in jeopardy, why wouldn't you want to be more involved in the defense and just go out swinging?
It would make sense for him. He's trying to hold on to his job security. The Jets did announce today that they interviewed Brian Duker, who was defensive assistant on the Miami Dolphins with Anthony Weaver last season. So look, they're clearly still interviewing candidates and trying to go through the process of figuring out who they want to be their next defensive coordinator. I think it's interesting that you say that, there's a good chance that Glenn could be calling the plays next year.
I think there's a chance. I didn't say good chance. I think there's a chance.
Not good chance. There's a chance.
Yeah,
There's a chance.
Yeah.
That does kind of line up with maybe the Chris Harris thinking and bringing back him as the defensive coordinator with Glenn.
That to me is amazing because, he presided over no interceptions, and it'd be amazing if he's the DC. But yeah, or does he get to hire a guy like Duker, like a younger guy that he's worked with before in Detroit, and just bring him along? I don't know. Yeah, the Chris Harris thing's a tough sell to me just because I feel like anyone who's really heavily involved in the 2025 Jets defense shouldn't be getting the DC job.
Aaron Glenn's going to sell it to the fans either way. He's going to sell it to you in the media.
I'm not sure you guys are buying this year from the sense I'm getting. I'm not sure you're going to be buying what he's selling.
It's I don't know anymore. I really don't. I don't think Aaron Glenn knows anymore, to be honest with you, but we'll see what happens. Kaz, we appreciate you hopping on here for the Gangs All Here live show, reacting to the news. Again, if you're just tuning in, Tanner Engstrand has parted ways with the New York Jets after one season as offensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn is going in a different direction. The Jets still have to be Rooney Rule compliant, which means they have to interview a ton of candidates before they come to the decision of hiring the new offensive coordinator, and they still haven't hired a defensive coordinator as well. But if you listen to Aaron Glenn, like he talked about at the Combine, he'll make it work. We find winners. That's what we want to do. As always, hit that like, hit that subscribe button on the New York Pro Sports YouTube channel. For Ryan, for Kaz, we'll catch you next time. And as always, Jets fans, I don't know what else to say. Good luck. Thanks, guys.